All right, everyone, welcome to another session and another day at ProfCon. So today we have both Karen Freeberg and Amanda Russell with us today. So my name is Catherine. I'm the Director of Human Resources and the Director of Customer Support here at Student. So I'm super excited to learn from both of these wonderful women today. So the Q&A is the Influencer Marketing Q&A with Amanda Russell. So just to give you a back of who each of these people are, Karen Freeberg is an associate professor in strategic communications at the University of Louisville, where she teaches, researches, and consults in social media strategy, public relations, and crisis communication. Karen has written several books, including The Roadmap and Teaching Social Media, Digital Media Writing for Strategic Communication, and Social Media for Strategic Communications, Creative Strategies, and Research-Based Applications. Karen has consulted, coordinated, and advised various companies in the areas of social media pedagogy and certification programs such as Canes Lions, Adobe Facebook, Blueprint, HubSpot, and more. And then we have Amanda Russell here, who will be answering our questions. So Amanda Russell is a fitness icon, entrepreneur, and author. She is also a professor of marketing at the University of Texas in Austin. Amanda designed and co-created University of California, Los Angeles' influencer marketing course, the world's first fully accredited program in influencer marketing. She has brought this curriculum to the University of Texas at Austin and is instituting it in universities across the globe. She advises some of the top companies in the world on influencer marketing and how to interact with their customers. Her highly anticipated book, The Influencer Code, was published earlier this year. All right, so we're going to go ahead and pass this on to Karen and Amanda. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's an honor to be here, and I'm just beyond excited and honored to be able to have this conversation with the best in the business, Amanda Russell. So welcome, Amanda, to ProfCon. I'm really excited to talk to you about this topic because, as you know, like, you're a thought leader, visionary, both in practice and teaching influencer marketing. So I'm really excited for this Q&A, and I know that we're going to have a lot of attendees interested in it. So, and I'm also really excited about your upcoming book, The Influencer Code, and this will be available in August.
In August, yes.
Yes.
So in time for the start of the semester. And thank you. It's fun having you be the interviewer, because usually it's the one I'm usually asking you all the questions. So this should be fun.
Well, I'm really excited, because you are definitely the expert in this area. So everyone, if you look at the chat function, Amanda has shared her link. So definitely buy this book. It's on my list for the fall because, everyone is talking about influencer marketing. So let's get started with the Q&A. So I'm excited.
Awesome.
So as we all know, in social digital marketing, PR, influencer marketing is one of the hottest topics. It's everywhere. Mm-hmm. Yet it's somewhat misunderstood. And could you tell, everyone, like, why do you think this is? Why is influencer marketing misunderstood?
Yeah, then that's probably, one of the things that fascinated me so much about the topic in itself is, like, what is influencer? Like, why is there so many different definitions? Why it's controversial of, like, whether it works, what's the ROI, all of these things. And I think the whole thing just has to start with reframing what it is. Mm-hmm. So in order to understand influencer marketing, first, you need to understand how people are influenced and come back to the true definition of influence. So this idea that influencer marketing is this new thing, it's not this new thing. And the term influencer is really an adjective. It's not a job title. So it has to start with influence. So whether it's a trend or whether it works or not, the very fact that the idea that humans are influenced is the root of what influencer marketing is. So no matter faculty that you teach in, or what subject or concentration of marketing that you happen to be teaching, or if your students are more the creative types or the corporate types, the one, like, commonality is the idea that no matter what we do in our careers and our jobs, we have to be able to have influence to grow. So before we, even start talking to students, like, oh, how great the brand is, how much engagement does this person, influencer, whatever, have, all the benefits we got to explain to the audience that our product has. Before we talk about any of this, you need to first understand what will influence your desired audience. And I think that a lot of the misunderstanding comes from the confusion between influence and attention, and influence and popularity. And you've probably heard this phrase that attention is currency, right? It's become a very popular. There are articles and blogs and even TED Talks this topic. And it's not wrong, but I think incomplete, and it leads us to a wrong definition of influencer marketing. Yes, attention will always matter, but in itself, it's not enough. And that's where we're getting confused. Whether you say a hilarious viral video or a tear-jerking Super Bowl ad, it may have your attention, but not necessarily your trust. Attention without trust is just noise. Mm-hmm. Attention plus trust is influence. As marketers, professors, as builders of brands, it's not attention we're after, it's influence. And I think attention plus trust is sort of the formula we need to start with, start understanding influencer marketing.
And I think that's so important because it really, especially with students, when they think of influencers, they have a certain definition, and you talk to people and, there's certain associations with the influencer. So it's, I think, so important to kind of define, okay, what influence is and what it isn't, to really kind of start the conversation. Yes. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up. And kind of when we were thinking about teaching influencer marketing, and that's something too, I get questions all the time about teaching influencer marketing. It's become like an area where it's like, does marketing teach it? Does PR? Like, do you have a separate course? But also at Texas, you also have been building an institute in influencer marketing. So I'd love to, maybe switch the conversation a little bit, Amanda, and talk, and ask you, like, from your experience and expertise, like, how, like, do you focus on social media or teach it more generally, like pre-social media, or how do you approach teaching influencer marketing for the students that you have?
That's a great question. And I think that one of the, as you said, one of the biggest things in academia is like, where does this fall? And usually it falls as one lecture in course in content marketing, in social media marketing, PR, advertising, all these things. And that's, I think, contributes to the kind of misunderstanding, because we're thinking of it as a social media tactic. Well, I think, reframe it, influence, the one of the kind of core myths I think about marketing is that social media. So I sometimes that resonates better with people, and they'll remember our story that, most people or that I do influencer marketing immediately to Instagram, YouTube, platform of the day. And then they start to ask questions about growing online followings, buying fake followers, et cetera, all these things. The around this is flawed, because social media is just a communication channel. It's not an influencer. It's a necessary component, but it's just a channel. So if I call you on the telephone and I tell you to, I'm like, okay, let's go to this new restaurant, about this new restaurant. And so we decide, we go to this restaurant for dinner. Well, the phone, the influencer, that was the channel. Social media is a channel. Influence is not new. It's just the channel. It's the what the network of the day is. It's the force behind it, the trust. So if somebody tweets out a recommendation for your new book, Karen, and they are a PR specialist, they're going to have the trust a lot bigger impact than, say, somebody with 1 million, 2 million followers that really aren't have any interest in PR, or it doesn't apply to their life at all. Mm-hmm. To say that the analogy is like, just because you buy a bunch of phones doesn't mean you have a sales team, and just because you buy a bunch of followers doesn't mean you have influence. The reality is, influence is not social media; it is a communication channel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so important.
Does that help?
Yeah, that definitely helps. And I think that I love the fact that you've talked about how, like, influence is not anything new, but as you said, it's a channel, and it's about using it strategically. And so with that being said, so you mentioned that you've built a class, like the first accredited course for UCLA. I'm also coming in from as a USC alum, but my parents went to UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that there's a college
rivalry. I know this. I know.
It's all good. But I'd be curious, in terms of like what you're doing at Texas and what you've done at UCLA, like when you're teaching, like you have the institute that you're building. So what are the type of courses that kind of fulfill, like, you know, like, do you have like several courses in influencer marketing? Are they specialized courses that you would see like in marketing and in public relations? I'd love to, I would imagine that our attendees too would be interested in terms of like what type of classes you have.
Yes. And that's a good question. So we're sort of building that out, and we'll just have it at University of Texas, but other schools as well, and how it'll be four core courses and then customized based on the faculty or the school. So if you're in a communications and advertising school, it'll be skewed with different courses than if you're in a business school. But those core courses, it tends to focus on influencer marketing part 1 and 2. So there's you know, these sound like you're on different ends of the spectrum, but from what the testing that we've done, it's the same audience in terms of there's influencer marketing, which is brands, basically how brands partner with influencers. And influencers by definition, not just meaning a human or a social media star, it's whatever forces have the power and the influence impact over your audience. So that could be another brand. So that's basically like the future brand partnership is like, you know, this role segmented, how are brands that are not necessarily Amazon going to break through? And even if you are Amazon, how do you stick out on it? And then the other side of that is, you know, the part 2, which is influencer yourself. So that doesn't necessarily mean become a social media star. It means if you want to advance in your career, if you're the promotion, if you want to, you know, raise the capital, you have to have influence yourself. And then we partner that with digital media marketing, email marketing, content. Some of the different schools are getting very, very finite depending on what they want that to look like, and they're more like digital marketing heavy, whereas some are more like, you know, and storytelling and content marketing, PR. So we're sort of still fleshing what that is. I can send you actually the sort of the skeleton for what a curriculum would look like in a traditional business school, and you can see how it would, you know, possibly convert to communications, if that helps.
That would be helpful, yes, because I'm coming in from a communications background, and
that's
so
right.
we do. So even though like it's interesting, like I feel like I kind of meld between both worlds because in my role in PR and StratCom, like I do actually have a cognate area in marketing, and then I have my PR background. So I'm like, oh, I'm like Switzerland, you know. So I'm basically able to kind of jump between.
Yeah.
And so I think that would be.
Yeah. I'm actually curious. Yeah, like how you have to look at what your school is already offering, which is what we've realized, and you probably testify, is that every school has some form of all of these, and they're all called sometimes different things, and sometimes they're electives, and they're here, and they're placed under that. But how do we kind of like bring framework to the Wild West, almost like a standard within the industry, like a standard across, and here's going to be the four, and then the rest will be sort of the electives, but you have to have a certain number of them.
That'd be fantastic. No, I think everyone here at ProfCon would be very interested because I know for us,
absolutely.
Even our university president is realizing, oh, like they talk about influencers all the time. It's so refreshing to be able to have, you know, conversations with leaders like, oh, you know what I'm doing. And so it's
right.
great.
And that's the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, and that's the problem that education's seeing, is that these kids come out of a program and no one still knows what they mean by, oh yeah, I've done digital marketing, I've done influence. Like, does that mean you've done social platforms? Does that mean, like, what does that mean?
Exactly. And so it's almost like within the teaching that we do, we not only have to educate our students, but we have to educate our community at our university and the leaders.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing. And so but yeah, I'd be very interested. I know everyone here at ProfCon would be very interested and intrigued, you know, and grateful for you sharing, you know, the resources on this. But one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, because this is a question that I get a lot. Does influencer marketing even work? And what are some new metrics that are used? Because that is like really a big question. Like everyone's like, oh, you got to do influencer marketing, but it's like, does it work? And like, how do we evaluate it? The evaluation of influencer marketing is so huge. I'd love to hear what you think about this.
Right. So many. So that's one of the, like I say, there's three big misunderstood questions, and that's three. And again, I got to like this question. It comes from a place of perspective first. So you have to go back and really think about influencer marketing. So to ask whether it works or not, of course, influencer marketing works. It comes from a place of how is your audience impacted to make their decisions? Well, till the end of time, this is not like a trend, right? It's influence people until humans stop being influenced or making their own decisions or choices. There's going to be influencer. What those channels are going to change. Whether it be humans, whether it's going to be organizations, whether it's going to be virtual avatars, this will change and evolve. But influencer marketing in itself is not going to change. The issue then comes in, how do you measure something as fluid as an influencer? And there's so many intangibles because it's not a hard science like any marketing and advertising. It's this mix between art and science, and humans themselves are so complex that we can't really force a certain metric in order to measure results, because by nature of doing that, you're missing so many things, or you're forcing the wrong metrics. So then how do you go about measuring it? And I think there's two components you need to consider. One is volume, and one is impact. And volume is obviously the more messages, right? The more messages, the more return, the more followers, the more conversation, the more all of these things. And then there's impact, and that is, who is the network? Who is the influencer, whether that person or whether that's Oprah's book club or whether that's, the World Health Organization. And I say that by saying, you're like, what are you talking about, the World Health Organization? Well, if the World Health Organization tells us all that chicken is poisonous for us tomorrow, then there's a good chance that a lot of us are going to stop eating chicken tomorrow. That's an influencer. So the impact of an expert, what influencers they work with, what is the content of the message. So then you want to weigh these factors, volume and impact, and they're not necessarily both important, and they're not necessarily one's more important than another all the time. It really depends on coming down to your goals. So number one, if I were to put a framework around measuring ROI, and actually in my book, I have a whole model that I've sort of created, and you're going to love this because the whole model analogy on how do you explain influencer marketing to the C-suite, to get budget, to a client, to get understanding and get onboarding in a way that has a framework that they understand, that isn't just a bunch of random numbers that may or may not mean anything. And so I call it the HIM model because it reminds me a lot, and I think this transfers over to the different forms of advertising as well. But think about workouts. So something called HIIT training, right? High interval training. And if your goal, if you start with your goal is to, let's say you're going to try to lose 10 pounds. And so you want to figure out what's the most efficient way to lose 10 pounds. So you buy a tracker, and day one, you track yourself and your burn tracker, and you go for, like, you exercise on steady state 6, and shows you like 700 calories. So you're like, wow, so that 60-minute workout burns 700 calories. Okay, got it. So now I'm going to try a HIIT workout, which is just short bursts of high intensity exercise. And that workout might take you 30 minutes. And your tracker shows you that you may have burned 250 calories. So if you're comparing those two, if you're looking at the numbers, right? If you're looking just at the numbers and you're trying to lose weight, what seems more efficient? The 700 run, right? Well, if you were actually looking at the big picture and all the other factors that were not directly attributable, like the afterburn and the fact that workout kills your appetite, where a long steady state cardio increases your appetite, so you might end up overcompensating eating, where actually the HIIT training is going to be much more efficient. But the numbers, if you were looking at the numbers, they lied. And I think that is how I model influencer marketing. Whereas, what is your goal, and then what are the indicators that are going to be goal? So we call these KPIs. So if you are brand awareness, well, how are you counting brand awareness? Everybody counts that differently. So what are the it factors? Are those followers? Are those video views? If it's web traffic, is it certain pages you want viewed, certain number of time on each page, a bounce rate? And here's the thing, some of the metrics are going to matter and some don't. So that's why it's so important to go back to your goal. You got to start there. There, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to happen? And then what really happened? And you use the numbers to support the big narrative, the story, versus spewing a bunch of numbers and then try to make sense of them. And I came from a marketing research and consulting firm, which is actually the Kantar Group. And I remember that was one of the things that really struck me when I started was I just couldn't believe how sometimes you could just take any numbers from any tool or any platform and you can really manipulate those any which way. And start with the numbers, start with like the story, and the intangibles that I talk about are the things that can't be measured quantitatively. So if you're forcing a certain software tool, or you might miss the fact that it wasn't measured that X influencer might not have hit a bunch of direct sales, but they made introductions to, high level producer who then wants to do a series on your book. Or whatever that. So like I said, some of the metrics matter, some don't. You have to find out what your goal is. And then, one thing that comes across often in terms of measurement is engagement. And I'm going to tell you the best way to kind of, my best example in terms of not really about the numbers so much as it is about the bigger narrative and tying it back to the goal, which is the Pepsi campaign. The first ever, I think it was 2014 or 2012 Pepsi campaign. They were the first ever massive brand in the world to completely forgo their Super Bowl advertising budget in favor of social media. And this is back in 2012-ish. I got to check my numbers on that. So this was very, very provocative for their time. And they took their 20 million budget and put all of that money completely into an online social give campaign. And it was called the Pepsi Refresh Project. I'm not sure if you're, you're probably familiar with this campaign. And the whole call to action on it, vote favorite charity. So the hypothesis was obviously, how many, let's get engagement, let's generate conversation, let's raise money for charities. And so all of these people, it was I think at one point it was that 1 in 3 Americans knew the campaign, which at that time, that's huge. So on a numbers level, if we were to measure that, the advertising agency hit it out of the park. That's like Oscar winning campaign, right? In terms of virality. But if we dug deeper and looked at the actual numbers and the bottom line of what happened to the brand, it was the first time in history that Pepsi lost market share and slid from number 2 behind Coca-Cola to number 3 behind Diet Coke. So their most viral, high engaging campaign actually flopped for the brand. So that's where that's where we have to think engagement, right? Engagement, size of audience, reach, popularity does not equal impact. And that's where advertising, PR, marketers, they get so excited about buzz and these like vague terms and the tools of the day that we forget to get back to the bottom line of the company. So if I were to put like a framework around it, it would be number 1, goal. Number 2, what do you want to happen? Take your baseline, and what those baseline is going to be different for every kind of company, right? So they say, does it work or not? Well, of course it works, but you know what? If you're an accountant, like your baseline is not to have a following.
Yeah, and I'm really
picking their account based on it.
Yeah, I really think Amanda, you brought up some really good points, in terms of like the measurement, and I absolutely 100% agree with you. There's so many times where I see PR case studies, especially in communications, like we got billions of impressions, and I'm like, okay, like, but how is that going to help our brand like impact? And so like when I talk to my students, it's like, yeah, you have communication and goals and objectives, but you also at the end of the day are working for a business, and you need to make sure whatever you're tying, you can have all this buzz you want, but if no one's buying or doing the actions that you want them to do, it's going to be completely flopped. And I've seen a lot of people spend a lot of money that really have, as you said, have not really driven like the results that they wanted. And I wanted to kind of segue into this next question, because it kind of talks about, like, we've talked a lot about the buzz of influencer marketing. We're talking about teaching influencer marketing, but do you think that there's a shelf life? And if so, what's next? What's on the horizon for influencer marketing?
Actual, like, if in itself, there's no shelf life as long as, right, it's the human component. However, in terms of like the future of what that looks like, well, the medium is going to change. So that actually, it's already starting to, but all of these like digital avatars, I think that's where it's really exciting, actually, is where creative meets content, and meets influencer, and meets digital. Because right now there's like this ethical dilemma about, like, is it ethical to raise followers or to build a following and then to like use your power to sell things? That's because we're looking at the different brand. They're not anymore. The line, the brand is a human, and where they're getting really working with humans, which are flawed. You can argue that a Kardashian, for example, and like, I know the nails on the chalkboard when that term comes up, but you can argue whether or not that's real or not. That's not any more real than a digital avatar, and that's where we're coming, right? Complete control. Why rely a lot more control over a digital avatar, and brand messaging and your brand voice and personality using something that the company then controls? And why not own it? And the reverse of that is that, like, the human brand, if you grow to that size, like, why endorse something else? Then you become your own then you create your own products.
And I think too, like, we got a couple of questions coming in. Lewis actually has a really good one, to kind of, when you're like, one thing that I have seen in terms of influencer marketing is that these influencers are kind of like jumping around, basically on the different platforms. Like, like one, for example, that comes to mind is David Dobrik. Like, everyone's like, oh, he's this YouTube star, but I mean, he actually has now more followers and engagement on TikTok than he did before. And so I feel that I tell my students, when a new platform comes over, sometimes there's such a saturation in one channel versus another, and people are like, oh, I got to get on the next best thing. And sometimes you have that crossover between, the different platforms. There's I feel like if anyone, wants to follow The Rock, for example, which I do everywhere, he's consistent across all the platforms, but there's some that have that very niche area and platform. And when that platform goes away, they are kind of like, well, how do I build that community? How do I stand out? So you're seeing more kind of diverse, kind of connections and touch points that these influencers are making to stay relevant, and more integrated. Do you see that at all, Amanda, too?
The role, right? You're talking like, if somebody gets a platform, they're going is their influence if tomorrow.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, guys.
Because they have
Amanda, something's going on with the Wi-Fi where you're at, so we're hearing very little of what you're saying.
For the people right around.
So we'll try to let that catch up. Karen, your Wi-Fi is coming through clear.
Okay.
For these next couple slides, we'll try to incorporate Amanda, but Karen, if you want to field with your thoughts maybe on a couple of these questions, and then we'll try to loop Amanda in once her Wi-Fi is able to reconnect.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for everyone for letting us know about the Wi-Fi. Technology is great when it works. And so yeah, let's as Amanda, you're working on your Wi-Fi. I do think that just to kind of reiterate, what the points that Amanda was saying about influencer marketing and the horizon. I think the big thing for all of us to kind of look at as educators who want to teach, influencer marketing, similar to what Amanda has talked about with using it as a channel. What we have to keep in mind is that, like all the channels and platforms we're using, so is influencer marketing. It's a key specialization that, while there's many key elements that are important that will stay consistent with influencer marketing, but there's going to be some changes along the way, and then adaptions, that we have to basically kind of keep in mind. And so it's kind of a fluid specialization, like social media. So I think that, as Amanda has pointed out, we're not necessarily going to be putting influencer marketing on the shelf and say, okay, this is like, so 2010s, or it's going to be gone in 2020. There's always going to be a purpose for influencer marketing, and it's about really kind of evolving. And so these influencers, whether it's these mega influencers or even these nano influencers who are just starting out in the career, it basically has a life cycle that we have to look at that. So yeah, Julianne has just come up, and so Creative Meets. So Amanda is working on her Wi-Fi on her end, so again, technology is great when it works. And so she'll be back up on that. But yeah, like, I think what she's, perhaps she can correct me if I'm wrong, focusing on Creative Meets strategy. I think, there is kind of an art and science related to influencer marketing that's really important. So what I want to kind of go over too, I know that Amanda's still working on getting her Wi-Fi going up. So how do I teach influencer marketing theory rather than sharing just examples? And I think for all of us who are educators who are interested in this area, I think that is something that we have to communicate with our students, is to utilize what theories, what perspectives, what additional materials and insights we have here, as in our various roles in marketing and public relations, communications. Like, are there theories that allow us to really tie in traditional communication and marketing and consumer behavior theories, and even social psychology theories, into examples? And I think tying in the science part of influencer marketing is crucial. And I'd be interested, and I know we have a lot of great attendees here, I'd be interested to see which theories you all use when you're talking about influencer marketing. And I would have to say, for me, I use a lot of social psychology, and that's because I actually started off as a psychology major before going into PR at the University of Florida, and also the original Dr. Freeberg, I call her my mom. She's written textbooks, and she is a professor in psychology. So there's a lot of social psychology theories, attribution theory, persuasion, that really source credibility, and that really can help us explain how and why social, like, influencers are relevant. And so I've done some research looking at, are there certain personality traits that are prominent and useful and powerful for our audiences. And so I would explore some of those theories to tie in, because a theory helps us explain and not necessarily reinvent the wheel. And so connecting those particular perspectives for students is important, because they might say, oh, influencer marketing has just happened to come up with social media. But really, it's, as Amanda has emphasized and talked about in her area of expertise, she brings forth that it is essentially a channel. And so I think it's really important for us to kind of utilize. And Louis, I'm really glad that you brought up that question, like looking at measurement theory and how making money once a hobby causes, influence burnout. Yeah. I'm really glad that you brought that up, Lewis, because yeah, I've seen a lot of cases. I do, like, the other area that I do a lot of research in is crisis communications, and so I do share with my students who, and I know there's been several, attendees who have commented about how that, all the students think, oh yeah, I can be an influencer, it's easy, but showing the mental challenges, like the cyberbullying and just the kind of the dark side of social media influencers is really important, because there's a lot of burnouts. And so I would strongly recommend, there's been a few new documentaries on Netflix that have kind of shown the impact of burnouts on influencer marketing. And I think it's important for us to kind of show both of those perspectives when we are looking at exploring, influencer marketing. So Lewis, I'm really glad that you brought that point up to kind of talk about burnout, because we have to give our students a whole picture, because they only kind of see the glamour side, like the Ferraris or the exclusive, YouTube award shows, and they get to be paid thousands upon thousands of dollars per post, per video. So Kristen, yeah, so there's a Netflix documentary. I will have to do some research. I'll make sure to tweet it out for the ProfCon, but there is one going, basically kind of talking about the mental health challenges among influencers. So I have like a list of influencer documentaries that I can definitely share out with everyone on these resources. So, but yeah, I mean, I know that Amanda probably has some great resources on that. So yeah, and so yes. So David, really great question about studies on influencer marketing and measurement. Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. One of the things that I recommend is like Google Scholar is my friend when it comes to influencer marketing resources, but there's a ton of really good journal articles. There's actually there was a special issue about, I think, a few months ago from the International Journal for Strategic Communication, and it was a whole special issue just on research and among influencers. And one of the things that I would recommend too, when you are looking for research in social media, like amongst influencers in academic literature, what you'll find is that every discipline categorizes them in different ways. So I've seen influencers, being referred to as social media influencers or SMIs. I've had others that say, okay, these are just influencers. And then the other group of, articles that you do see is online opinion leaders. So when you are looking at research, I would recommend, David, to kind of look at those various key terms, because every field is going to want to own that term. So I'm not sure, like where and specifically you're looking, that would be something that would be, important to kind of explore. So, David, great question about NCAA's rules change. Yes, I am probably one of the professors that is really, really happy about this. Not only because, I have a lot of student athletes in my classes, but I was a former student athlete at Florida and Southern Cal. And so this would have been really amazing to have, because when I was a student athlete, I just had a blog, I had an email newsletter. But even back then, it was just, I'm dating myself a little bit, this was early 2000s when I was competing. We weren't really, like, this was so new, like online and digital. Like, what do you mean you could have an audience in personal brand as a student athlete, and be an influencer in this realm? But I do think that there's a lot of really good companies that are focusing on this, David. So I would recommend looking at Open Doors. So they actually have officially become one of the leading platforms and organizations that really has focused on helping student athletes with their personal branding. I would also recommend Jeremy Darlow. Jeremy Darlow, he's on Twitter, just Jeremy Darlow. But he is a former head of global brand marketing for Adidas. And so I want to actually share a book with you guys. It's the Darlow Rules. So this is Jeremy's new book. I'm actually using this for my PR class because it like literally walks through, about personal branding, exactly what you're saying, David. It's like an essential book. So the book is called Darlow Rules. So that is really a great resource. But Jeremy is a wealth of information. So if you're looking, as you said, having students take on athlete clients, that would be tremendous. So Jeremy is a wealth of information. Like if you used this book for his class, it really kind of walks various steps through how to build your, influence. Because that's his big thing, is how to empower student athletes to own their brand, which I think is a good thing. I mean, they have like such good opportunities to be able to use their brand for good, to really kind of shine, and they can build that whether they go on to the pros or they can, build that onto future careers. So I think it's a good element. So Lewis, as SMI typology worth exploring? Yes. I would say the typology. So the typology focuses on mega, micro, nano, and there's always a new one. So, so Amanda, are you back?
I think so. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm in the mountains. So can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you. Okay. So, yeah. No, it's all good. Technology is great when it works. I was just talking about athletes, personal branding, research. So, we actually just have 4 more minutes. So, what I was thinking
thanks for taking over.
Yeah. Happy to help. Yeah, I'm not the expert in this, but I'm really glad that you're able to get back. So I
feel like.
Oh, sorry, Amanda.
I said I owe everybody. I'll do like a webinar after this. Maybe I'll send some links for some options.
Well, that would be tremendous. And so I think one of the questions that we could maybe end on is maybe how can my students and I stay on top of the latest trends? And do you have any tools and resources that you would recommend our fellow colleagues at ProfCon to take?
Yeah, so one of the first things that I say for
It looks like, Amanda, if you can hear us, we're not able to hear you. Again, technology is great. So I guess, Amanda, if you can check your technologies and connections again, that would be tremendous. But I would say, like, I can put a couple of tips here for everyone in terms of like how to stay up to date with the latest trends. So first and foremost, I would say if you're not following Matt Navarra, Navarra. So he's a consultant at the UK. He pretty much he's an influencer when it comes to technologies. He pretty much helps me stay on top of things, across the board. He let me know today actually that YouTube was rebranding their own influencer and creator platform, to be a little bit more updated with the current trends. So I would recommend him. If you're not following Taylor Lorenz, Lorenz, she is a writer for the New York Times. She really has focused, she was previously at the Atlantic, but now she's at the New York Times. And she's kind of my go-to if I want to know anything about TikTok houses or hype houses, Gen Z, T accounts, battles between influencers and drama. Like, she's like my go-to. So while these are individuals who are professionals in the field, I would say that those would be 2 that I would recommend following as great resources. But there's a lot of really, good opportunities to kind of look at influencer marketing. I would say too, to keep on your calendar, if you're looking at new other free events. I'm actually going to type in the chat. So Cannes Lions is the Festival of Creativity. So it's supposed to be scheduled for this next week, but they're going all virtual, and they actually have a track dedicated to influencers. So they actually showcase actual campaigns and like talks basically on influencer marketing. And so that would be my recommendation too, especially for next week. It's going to be a free event. So all you need to do is go online to search for Cannes Lions. You'll see Lions Live, and there'll be a link right there. So they have free talks virtually because, of course, Cannes Lions is not going to be able to happen in person. So those would be some of my additional resources. And I know that we are just about out of time at our 45-minute mark. And again, thank you all for your understanding, with the technology challenges. I know Amanda said that she would be more than happy to update and do another webinar on the subject. She's really amazing, and I would highly recommend reaching out to her. She does have her book link at the top of the chat for the influencer code that will be coming out in August. So if you're looking for an additional supplement focusing on influencer marketing, I would strongly recommend checking it out. She really has produced a great piece of work. So, and again, I'm really honored to be here. And thank you, Edgar. Thank you for your kind comments. And if anyone has any questions too, Amanda has her Twitter handle here. It's just at AR_consults. And if you want to connect with Amanda on her slides, you'll be able to get her LinkedIn connection. So I'm sure that she would be more than happy to chat with you as well. So again, thank you, Catherine, for hosting us for this session. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of ProfCon. And I'm really appreciative again for your kind words, and, definitely share your thoughts and insights with Amanda. I think she'd be very grateful. So thank you all again for taking the opportunity to share, and, be part of the influencer marketing segment. So again, thank you, Stukin, for this opportunity. And I hope you all have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you so much, Karen and Amanda. Karen, you're amazing for jumping in during those technical difficulties. Great things to learn from you and Amanda both. Yeah. So I just wanted to, first off, thank you guys for that, and then also give a plug for our Expo sessions that we have. So if you just go to the Expo tab on the main page of this platform, you can learn more about student courseware, interact with one of our course consultants who will be able to walk you through our different platforms, and you can learn more about us. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of ProfCon.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Rachel. Can you hear me?